The WWE Universe erupted into absolute chaos on the October 23, 2025 episode of Monday Night Raw when Seth Rollins made his shocking return after weeks of absence, and what he did sent shockwaves through the entire roster. The Architect came back with a vengeance, targeting two of the most dominant forces in WWE today, Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker, in a moment that nobody saw coming. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we break down all the biggest WWE moments as they happen. Seth Rollins had been missing from WWE television for several weeks, and speculation about his whereabouts had been running wild among fans and wrestling insiders alike. Some believed he was dealing with an injury, others thought he was taking time off to recharge, but the truth turned out to be far more explosive than anyone could have imagined. The visionary was not just taking time away from the action but was plotting his next move, and that move would involve taking down two men who had been terrorizing Monday Night Raw during his absence. Bronson Reed had been on an absolute tear since moving to Raw, crushing anyone who stood in his path with his devastating power moves and tsunami splashes that left opponents broken and battered. The massive Australian superstar had been racking up victories left and right, establishing himself as one of the most feared competitors on the Red brand. His sheer size and athleticism made him a nightmare matchup for anyone, and he had been using his momentum to climb the ranks toward championship contention. Bron Breakker, on the other hand, had been making his own statement of dominance on Monday Night Raw. The second-generation superstar, carrying the legacy of the legendary Steiner family, had been showcasing why many consider him the future of professional wrestling. His combination of raw power, incredible speed, and technical prowess made him a complete package inside the squared circle. Breakker had been cutting through the competition with his signature spear and had his sights set on gold, leaving destruction in his wake week after week. The night started like any other episode of Raw, with the crowd hot and ready for action. The arena was packed with thousands of fans eager to see what would unfold on this particular evening. Bronson Reed had been scheduled to appear in a segment that would address his recent string of victories and his intentions moving forward. The big man made his way to the ring with his usual intimidating presence, and the audience responded with a mixture of boos and grudging respect for his undeniable abilities. Reed grabbed a microphone and began speaking about how he had been unstoppable on Monday Night Raw, destroying everyone who dared to step up to him. He talked about how there was nobody on the roster who could match his power and how he was ready to take the next step toward becoming a champion. The confidence in his voice was unmistakable as he declared that he was the most dangerous man in all of WWE, and anyone who disagreed would end up just like all his previous opponents, flat on their backs staring at the lights. Before Reed could finish his declaration of dominance, the music of Bron Breakker hit the speakers, and the crowd reaction shifted immediately. Breakker stormed out onto the entrance ramp with intensity written all over his face. He walked to the ring with purpose, never taking his eyes off Bronson Reed. The tension between these two powerhouses was thick enough to cut with a knife, and everyone in the arena could feel that something explosive was about to happen. Breakker entered the ring and got face to face with Reed, and the size comparison between these two monsters was striking. Both men stood their ground, neither willing to back down even an inch. Breakker snatched a microphone and told Reed that his reign of terror was about to come to an end because there was a new dominant force on Raw, and that force was Bron Breakker. He reminded Reed that he came from wrestling royalty and that he had been bred for this business, trained to be the best, and destined to hold championship gold. The verbal confrontation quickly escalated as both men traded insults and threats, each trying to establish their superiority over the other. Reed shoved Breakker, and Breakker responded by shoving Reed right back. The situation was seconds away from turning into an all-out brawl when suddenly the lights in the arena went dark. Confusion swept through the crowd as everyone wondered what was happening. The darkness lasted for several seconds before a familiar sound began to play through the speakers. The opening notes of Seth Rollins' entrance music blasted through the arena, and the place absolutely exploded with noise. Fans jumped to their feet, screaming at the top of their lungs as they realized that the Architect was back. The lights came back on to reveal Seth Rollins standing at the top of the entrance ramp, dressed in his ring gear and looking ready for a fight. His eyes were locked on the ring where Reed and Breakker stood looking confused and caught off guard by his sudden appearance. Rollins had a microphone in his hand, and he wasted no time addressing the situation. He told Reed and Breakker that while he had been away from Monday Night Raw, he had been watching everything that had been happening. He had seen them running roughshod over the roster, acting like they owned the place, and thinking they were unstoppable forces. Rollins said that he found it amusing that these two men thought they could fill the void he left behind, but the reality was that there was only one Architect of Monday Night Raw, and that was Seth freaking Rollins. The crowd was hanging on every word as Rollins continued his promo. He told Reed and Breakker that they had been having fun playing King of the Mountain during his absence, but now the real king was back, and it was time to remind everyone exactly who runs Monday Night Raw. The intensity in Rollins' voice was undeniable, and you could see the fire burning in his eyes as he spoke. This was not the same Seth Rollins who had left weeks ago. This was a man on a mission, a man with something to prove. Reed and Breakker stood in the ring, seemingly unbothered by Rollins' words. They exchanged glances and appeared to be communicating non-verbally before both men turned their attention back to Rollins and started laughing. Reed grabbed the microphone and told Rollins that maybe he had been gone too long, maybe he had lost a step, because if he thought he could come back and just pick up where he left off, he was sadly mistaken. Reed said that Monday Night Raw had evolved in Rollins' absence, and the new era belonged to men like him and Breakker. Breakker took the microphone next and added that Rollins was living in the past if he thought his name still carried the same weight it once did. He told Rollins that this generation of superstars was bigger, faster, and stronger than ever before, and that included both him and Reed. Breakker challenged Rollins to come down to the ring if he really wanted to prove he still belonged at the top of the card on Monday Night Raw. The challenge hung in the air as Rollins smirked and began walking down the ramp. The atmosphere in the arena was electric as Rollins made his way toward the ring. Every step he took increased the anticipation of what was about to happen. Reed and Breakker positioned themselves strategically in the ring, clearly planning to double-team Rollins the moment he stepped between the ropes. Rollins paused at ringside, looking at both men, seemingly calculating his next move. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, waiting to see what the visionary had planned. In a flash, Rollins slid into the ring and immediately went after Bronson Reed with a series of rapid-fire strikes. The speed and precision of Rollins' offense caught Reed off guard, and before the big man could mount a proper defense, Rollins had already landed several significant blows. However, the numbers game quickly came into play as Bron Breakker joined the attack, and suddenly Rollins found himself fighting off two of the most powerful men on the Raw roster. Despite being outnumbered, Rollins fought with the desperation and cunning that had made him one of the most successful superstars in WWE history. He used his speed and ring awareness to avoid the power moves that Reed and Breakker attempted to hit him with. Rollins would strike one man and then quickly move away before the other could grab him. He ducked a clothesline from Reed and countered with a super kick that staggered the big man. He then turned his attention to Breakker and caught him with a sling blade that sent the second-generation star tumbling across the ring. The back-and-forth action was intense as all three men battled for supremacy. Rollins managed to create some separation and positioned himself in the corner, measuring both opponents. Reed recovered first and charged at Rollins, but the architect moved out of the way at the last second, causing Reed to crash into the turnbuckles. Rollins then caught Breakker with his signature blackout curb stomp, planting the young star face first into the mat. The crowd erupted at the sight of Rollins hitting his finishing move. Before Rollins could capitalize further, Bronson Reed recovered and grabbed him from behind. The massive Australian lifted Rollins up for a powerbomb, but Rollins managed to counter by raking Reed's eyes. The referee called for the bell as the match had officially broken down into chaos. Security personnel rushed down to the ring to try and restore order, but the three superstars continued to brawl despite their presence. Rollins fought off security members while simultaneously trying to get his hands back on Reed and Breakker. The scene was absolute pandemonium as bodies flew everywhere. More referees and officials came out from the back to try and separate the three competitors, but it took nearly a dozen people to finally pull them apart. Even as they were being held back, all three men were screaming at each other and trying to break free to continue the fight. The crowd was going absolutely insane at what they had just witnessed. Chants of "This is awesome" echoed throughout the arena as fans showed their appreciation for the chaos they had just seen. The intensity and physicality displayed by all three men had been off the charts, and it was clear that this was just the beginning of what would be a long and brutal rivalry. As Raw went to a commercial break, cameras showed Seth Rollins being held back by several officials near the entrance ramp while Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker were still in the ring, also being restrained. The look in Rollins' eyes said it all. He was back, and he was coming for both of these men with everything he had. The message had been sent loud and clear. Monday Night Raw just got a lot more dangerous with the architect back in the building. When the show returned from commercial, backstage interviewers caught up with Seth Rollins as he was walking through the corridor. They asked him about his actions and what his intentions were moving forward. Rollins stopped and looked directly into the camera with an intensity that sent chills down the spines of everyone watching. He said that Reed and Breakker had been running wild during his absence, and that was unacceptable. He said that Monday Night Raw was his show, it had always been his show, and he was back to reclaim what was rightfully his. Rollins continued by saying that he didn't care if he had to go through both men at the same time or separately, but one way or another, he was going to remind the entire WWE Universe why he was called the Visionary. He said that Reed and Breakker had made a mistake by thinking they could just take over in his absence, and now they were going to pay the price for that mistake. The passion and conviction in Rollins' voice made it clear that this was not just about ego or pride. This was about proving that he was still the top guy on Monday Night Raw. Later in the evening, cameras caught Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker having a heated discussion backstage. Despite having been on the same side earlier against Rollins, tensions between the two powerhouses were clearly rising. Reed accused Breakker of not having his back when Rollins attacked, while Breakker fired back that Reed was the one who got caught off guard in the first place. The friction between these two men added another layer of complexity to the situation, suggesting that while they might temporarily align against Rollins, their own rivalry was far from over. WWE officials were shown in another backstage segment trying to figure out how to handle the volatile situation. Raw General Manager Adam Pearce was seen discussing options with his staff, knowing that he needed to do something before the situation spiraled further out of control. The implication was clear that some kind of major match or confrontation would be announced in the coming weeks to settle the score between these three competitors. Social media exploded following the show, with fans and wrestlers alike reacting to Seth Rollins' stunning return. Hashtags related to Rollins, Reed, and Breakker trend worldwide as the WWE Universe debated what would happen next. Many fans praised Rollins for the explosive nature of his return, while others questioned whether he could truly handle both Reed and Breakker at the same time. The debate raged on across all platforms as everyone tried to predict what would come next in this developing storyline. Wrestling analysts and insiders weighed in on the situation, with most agreeing that WWE had created a potentially show-stealing feud heading into the next premium live event. The combination of Seth Rollins' star power and proven track record with the raw potential and physical dominance of both Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker created an intriguing dynamic that could produce incredible matches. Some suggested a triple threat match would be the perfect way to settle the dispute, while others argued that individual feuds between Rollins and each man would be more effective in the long run. The implications of this return extended beyond just these three competitors. With Rollins back in the picture and targeting two men who had been in the championship conversation, it raised questions about how this would affect the title scene on Monday Night Raw. Would the current champion need to worry about any of these three men? Would this feud create opportunities for other superstars to sneak into championship contention while these three were focused on destroying each other? The ripple effects of this one segment would be felt throughout the entire Raw roster. Seth Rollins had proven once again why he was considered one of the most compelling and important superstars in WWE. His return was not just a simple comeback, it was a statement of intent. It was a declaration that Monday Night Raw belonged to him, and anyone who thought otherwise would have to deal with the consequences. The way he targeted both Reed and Breakker simultaneously showed that he was not intimidated by either man's size or strength, and he was willing to fight any battle necessary to prove his point. For Bronson Reed, the return of Rollins represented both a challenge and an opportunity. Reed had been building incredible momentum, and a feud with a top-level star like Rollins could elevate him even further. However, he now had to deal with not just Rollins but also the complications of his strained relationship with Bron Breakker. Reed would need to navigate these turbulent waters carefully if he wanted to maintain his position as one of Raw's most dominant forces. Bron Breakker faced a similar situation. The young star had been making huge strides in establishing himself as a main event level talent, and this feud could be the perfect showcase for his abilities. However, being caught in the middle of a three-way rivalry with two established stars like Rollins and Reed would test him in ways he had not been tested before. Breakker would need to prove that he belonged in this upper echelon of competition and that his name belonged alongside the biggest stars in WWE. The October 23, 2025 episode of Monday Night Raw will be remembered as the night Seth Rollins returned with a vengeance and set Monday Night Raw on fire. His attacks on Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker created a situation that promised weeks or even months of incredible television. The three-way dynamic between these competitors offered endless possibilities for match combinations and storyline developments that would keep fans engaged and excited for what came next. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Seth Rollins' explosive return and want to stay updated on all the latest WWE news and developments, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of the action from Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, or any WWE Premium live events.